In another bid to ease the spiraling tensions, US President Joe Biden spoke to his Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin for close to an hour, where they exchanged warnings over Ukraine. This is their second conversation this month, and while no breakthrough occurred in the talks, both presidents indicated support for further diplomacy on the tense standoff between Russia and the West. While Biden said he needed to see Russia de-escalate the military buildup near Ukraine, Putin said that anti-Moscow sanctions would be a colossal mistake that would have grave consequences. Despite the talk of diplomacy, officials on both sides later described that the tone of the call was confrontational, and neither side admitted to any significant progress towards a resolution. Biden, according to senior U.S. officials, laid out two paths. One was diplomacy, and the other path more focused on deterrence. That would include serious costs and consequences. The possibilities include measures that would effectively disconnect Russia from the global economic and financial system. The call between the two leaders for now has set the stage for lower-level engagements between the two countries, the first of which is scheduled for the 10th of January. An in-person security meeting between U.S.-Russian officials in Geneva, followed by a Russia-NATO session on the 12th of January, and a broader conference including Moscow, Washington, and other European countries on the 13th of January. Now, Russia's foreign ministry spelled out clearly what Moscow wants from the January talks. Listen in.
В ходе переговоров будем добиваться от американской стороны предоставления твердых правовых гарантий безопасности Российской Федерации, а именно не продвижение НАТО на восток и не размещение угрожающих России систем вооружений у рубежов нашей страны.
Washington and its European allies accuse Russia of threatening Ukraine with a new invasion. Some 100,000 Russian troops are amassed near the border, and while Russia denies having any invasion plans, the West remains skeptical. After all, Russia already seized the Crimean Peninsula in 2014 and is accused of supporting pro-Russian separatists in Ukraine. In exchange for withdrawing troops and de-escalating tensions, Russia put forth a set of demands earlier this month, which includes a ban on new U.S. military bases in the former territories of the Soviet Union. The U.S., in turn, has rejected what it calls a bid by Moscow to dictate independent countries' futures. Despite ongoing dialogue, however, the status quo remains unchanged. Our Russian affairs expert, Fred Weir, is joining us live from Moscow for more on this story. Thank you for being with us, Fred. Now, the tone and tenor of the phone call was a serious one, according to officials from both sides, and both Biden and Putin traded warnings over Ukraine during the 50-minute call. How do you see the situation panning out after these talks?
I think we have to look past the posturing, each side showing how determined and resolute they are, and just marvel at the fact that this diplomatic process is taking place and it's being managed from the top. Putin and Biden have had two face-to-face conversations, well, over Zoom, but in less than a month. And these talks are absolutely unprecedented that are going to occur in a couple of weeks. So I think that we have to be optimistic that something will change. The Russians did submit two draft treaties with their entire wish list, which is clearly also an unprecedented thing, but obviously not going to happen. But what could happen is that there would be clear understandings emerging that the process of NATO expansion to the east is basically over. And de facto, it's been over for quite a long time. Nobody ever anywhere thinks that Ukraine is going to join NATO. But that if that could be consolidated in some sort of a legal guarantee or even a clear understanding, that would change the security order in Europe to Russia's satisfaction, I think. Also, it has to be noted that last night Biden did promise not to station offensive American or NATO weaponry in Ukraine. That's a massive concession. And it's sort of reminiscent of the Cuban Missile Crisis, or a desire to avoid any repeat of the Cuban Missile Crisis. And it shows that the Americans do recognize that Ukraine is strategic terrain for Russia, that something has to be done here to defuse a 30-year-old crisis. And that's what it was, NATO expanding ever more to the east. This is for Russia always been a bone of contention. But the fact that Putin is drawing the line now suggests that something is going to have to be done. And we might look forward to a happier and more secure 2022 as a result.
Right. Now, Fred, Biden made it clear that the United States and its allies and partners will respond decisively if Russia further invades Ukraine, if they make that move. What are the options that the U.S. and the West can exercise to stop Russia's buildup of troops on the Ukraine border?
Well, first of all, there isn't much of a buildup. There aren't significantly more troops in the Western Military District of Russia today than there were a year ago. The thing is that Russia moved troops from their garrison, some of them quite near to the Ukrainian border, where they were permanently stationed, to the border. They did suspicious-looking things like setting up field kitchens and hospitals, suggestions that in the future weeks, they might carry out an offensive military operation. But the Russians did that in plain sight of satellite cameras, so they knew what they were doing. And I think for now, we have to assume that they did that in order to start this conversation. Putin himself said, the Americans never listen to us unless they feel tense about something. So the Russians clearly created this situation. But an invasion of Ukraine, like Blitzkrieg style, is the sort of thing that so many people using 1930s analogies are deploying to get this whole situation pretty wrong. What Russia would do if none of its demands are met or no satisfaction is obtained, perhaps is meddle in Ukraine. It's a deeply divided country. Very, very politically unstable. There's lots of options for Russia to expand separatism there, to subvert, to stage coups d'état, short of invasion. I don't think that Russia contemplates an outright invasion of Ukraine.
Right. Great. Thank you very much for your valuable insights there.
WION, now available in your country. Download the app now. Get all the news on the move.